Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of Politics of the Empire, presented by theempiremedia.com. I'm your host, Dorf, joined in each and every episode by Empire Media Media Network, whatever. Founder Adam Hernandez and Josh Houselander. How's it going, everybody?
Excellent.
Good.
We're back. This is episode 15, like I said, and number 2 on the subject of anarchism.
We did one on anarchism?
Yeah.
We did?
Yeah.
We did one on anarcho-capitalism versus anarcho-communism.
Yes.
But yeah. So
It's just basic anarchism.
Endpoint 1.5? I don't know. How do we?
Don't do that, because that's stuff that Josh does, and it's stupid.
15R.
Yeah. Version 2.716b. Anyway, I am your resident filthy unapologetic statist, and these two, anarcho lover, chaos lovers here will do their damnedest to convince me that I am wrong. So, who wants to lead off with a great, easy definition of how you would like to define anarchism, whether it's the dictionary definition or what definition are we playing by for the remainder of this episode?
Well, to start with two very simple definitions that don't really contradict each other in any way, is I would list it as definition 1 is simply no rulers, or the want to have no rulers over you. The other definition I would give is simply the absence of government. Adam,
okay.
Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, two things. Anarchy is... It literally means without hierarchy. So it's an absence of unjust hierarchies. And kind of piggybacking off of what Josh said, anarchy doesn't necessarily mean no rules, but it does mean no rulers. Because I know that's a common misconception. I don't like going off of the dictionary definition of a lot of things, just because it seems to conflate what the actual meaning behind the term is. Sometimes it seems to take like more of a mainstream definition of a particular word or ideology, like anarchy. I think in this sense, the best way to approach it and to define it is by its historical definition and not so much its textbook definition, if that makes sense.
I also feel that the term voluntarism is extremely important when it comes to anarchy. Because when you say that things aren't possible in anarchy, anything is possible as long as they still are voluntary.
I think for the most part, too, I think that's important, Josh. I know that that's something, too, that may get misconstrued with different types of anarchy. In general, voluntarism is somewhat of a general rule when it comes to anarchy as a whole. I think there might be some drawback when it comes to that in a more specific sense, but I won't get into semantics or anything like that when it comes to
right.
And
I know we did kind of cover this before, but in a past episode we talked, and if there's something that Adam and I perhaps differ on a little bit, is that I in some ways reject the terms anarcho-capitalist and anarcho-communist, not because those things couldn't exist, because I believe that once you have anarchy, you technically don't have either one of those. I feel like they exist, but because people choose for them to exist, not because they actually exist as a hierarchy.
And like my music, I am I'm pretty strict when it comes to labeling as such. I am very much a anarcho-communist. I think that's the most tried and true form of anarchy there is. And tonight that's going to be my perspective that I'm going to be taking for the very most part. I'm going to be taking the anarcho-communist take on anarchy. Not to mention, but I mean, just there are different forms of anarchy. There are different quote unquote textbook definitions and versions of anarchy. There's anarcho-communism, there's anarcho-capitalism, there's anarcho-primitivism, there's anarcho-pacifism that Josh and I were actually talking about before the show started. There's anarcho-mutualism, which anarcho-communism actually kind of came out of a little bit.
And there's a Christian anarchy movement, a Mormon anarchy movement.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different subgroups of anarchism, different philosophies, different ideologies when it comes to anarchism. But like I said, I'm going to probably take a anarcho-communism view from here on out.
Something else I think is definitely worth noting, and doesn't really. This is more for the viewers, because I know Dorf knows this about the way Adam and I feel. But when we say anarchy, this is not what you may have heard about anarchy in the past. When we say anarchy, we do not mean chaos. That is not what we mean. Chaos can exist in many forms. I mean, in any form, whether it's look at Hong Kong right now. You're looking at a government that is the farthest a government can be from anarchy, and they have chaos. So chaos can be a product of just about anything.
Well, yeah. Actually, I mean, like I said, anarchy, it doesn't... Anarchy means no rulers. It doesn't mean no rules. Anarchy, in a sense, is a very organized form of... not government, but just system of living, and it has to be. It has to be. It has to be. It has to be a very organized system. If it's not, it is going to descend into chaos, much like a government would. If there's no systems in place within capitalism, or in that instance a republic, then yeah, there's going to be chaos that will take place.
It isn't an absence of culture or an absence of civility,
Absolutely
but it is
not.
an absence of government.
Absolutely.
Dorf, one thing I want to say to you, I give you a lot of credit for starting off the show by saying that you are an unapologetic statist. I mean, I do, because there's the vast majority of people, especially in this nation, but in most developed nations, I'll just go right ahead and say the world, are on your side. But very few will come out and say what you said, that you are an unapologetic statist. You've looked into it and you are a statist. That I do give you credit for that. And when I kind of give the basic question I like to ask people or raise of people when discussing any form of anarchism is kind of the same thing I do when you troll people with the question of, or the statement that taxation is theft. You say taxation is theft, and people say, but it's the price you pay to live in a civilized society. They say, well, but there's taxes in the Constitution, so Like, I didn't say it was unconstitutional. I didn't say it wasn't part of society. I didn't say it wasn't a lot of things. But an intellectually honest person does have to admit that taxation is theft, even if you like taxes. Even if you think taxes are great and they're a good idea, and even if you cannot be convinced otherwise that taxes are necessary, any person has to exist that it's theft, right? And you have to be able to admit that it was taken against your will, i.e. the basic dictionary definition of theft. Would you pay it if it was voluntary? No. Did you pay it? Yes. Was it stolen from you? Yes. And what I say with anarchy is, as Adam stated, a system of no rulers. So, if you are opposed to anarchy, that means you want a ruler. That means you want somebody to rule over you, whether it be a monarch or elected official or whomever. So I always ask that people who oppose anarchy, at the very least, admit that you want a ruler. You want somebody ruling over you.
Or rulers.
Yeah. Yeah, ruler or rulers.
But I mean, but that's one last thing before you can jump in here, Dorf. That is, like you said, that is one of the basic tenets of of anarchy is anarchy has to be, you have to consent to anarchy. If you're not consenting to anarchy, then you just have a typical government.
Yeah, then it's not anarchy.
Yeah, you just have a typical cohesive government where you are forced to pay taxes. You're forced to go to war if you are drafted. You are forced to, do a bunch of different things that you don't consent to.
Go to church. Go to jury duty. Go somewhere.
Yeah.
Or you do not own 100% of your labor.
You don't know. Yes, exactly. You don't own 100% of your labor. You have to get permission to drive a car. You have to get permission to do a bunch of different things. But anarchy typically is, like I said, well, not typically. It is a you have to consent to it. It isn't cohesive. It isn't forced upon anyone. You have to, like I said, concede to it. So go ahead, Dorf.
Okay, so I've got a couple notes here, some things I've been writing down as you guys have been waxing poetically about the ethics of anarchy. On an ethical level, guys, I don't know that I can disagree with you that a state without a ruler over you, a state of being without a ruler over you, isn't a preferable outcome. However, when you get to the practical application of what it would be necessary and what changes in your lifestyle would be necessary to make that happen, I don't think I'm willing to give that up, which is why I think you would argue that I said I'm an unapologetic statist, and I don't think you'll get a lot of people behind you. That's why I think the state or the presence of a collective culture of some sort has existed for as long as it has and will continue to exist, I would argue, likely forever. All right, hang on. I'm going to ask you guys one question here. Adam, I know very, very early on you said part of anarchy is the lack of unjustified hierarchies. Mm-hmm. I want your definition of that. How would you define an unjust, with specific examples, how would you define that?
Okay, well, I'm maybe I won't define it for you, but I will give you an example.
Okay.
Now, there are two different types of hierarchies. There are there's a hierarchy in a sense where you would I don't have the actual definition in front of me, but there is a hierarchy. For instance, a hierarchy within a family. That is something that is justified. Josh has a son here right now. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that hierarchy is justified because Josh's son isn't at an age right now where he could necessarily go off and make decisions on his own. Josh is his parent. Alex, how old are you, Alex?
13.
Alex is 13 years old. Obviously, at this point right now, Josh is still going to know what is best for his son. Same thing with me. My son is 5, even more so. I'm not going to expect a 5-year-old to go out and make decisions for himself. So that type of hierarchy is justified. Another hierarchy that is justified is say you're on a ship. Say you're part of a crew on a ship. It's a dangerous job. It is something that you're probably going to want to defer control
to a captain.
Just because they have more experience probably out on the open seas. You're probably going to want to defer that authority to the more experienced crew members of that ship.
You're part of a church.
Yes.
For instance, you're part of a church. You go to church on Sundays. When you're in church on Sundays, the priest is in charge or the minister is in charge. You defer to him. He does the speaking. You are there to listen and to worship. But that is voluntary, of course.
Yeah, but another one, though, that maybe isn't justified, and this is going to be my anarcho-communist speaking here, take a coffee shop. There is a hierarchy within a coffee shop. You have your owner, you have your manager, you have your shift supervisor, and you have your workers. Is it going to make any difference whatsoever if you rotate who's in charge that week or who makes the decisions that week by way of a democratic process for a coffee shop? Probably not. So I would say the hierarchy of a coffee shop and probably most forms of labor out there are unjustified.
Okay, so I'm going to make a statement here. I want to get your thoughts here. I mean, be honest with me. I'm not trying. I know we're friends. I'm not trying to get. You have a deep problem with competence hierarchies. Is that you don't see competence hierarchies as legitimate?
No, competence hierarchies. No, like.
Okay, well, your coffee shop example there. It's a in today's society, that's a voluntary, employee-employer relationship.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, you can leave. People are put in positions by stakeholders, that being the owner in your specific example, because the owner believes it's the manager, and then thereby their shift leads are the best, most efficient way to run their organization. Now, is a coffee shop a terribly hard, complex organization to run the day-to-day operations of? I don't know. I've never worked in food. I couldn't tell you. Probably not, though. But at the same time, that example extrapolated to the rest of the business climate, the idea that people who make incredibly large decisions are incredibly competent leaders. I know that your thoughts are. I know what your thoughts are here. I'd like you to lay them out as well. I know that you personally have a big problem with, like, example of CEO of company X that makes 2,000 times what the average worker that works, at the entry level for him does. Mm-hmm. You don't see that as legitimate. I would argue that that's not only incredibly legitimate, but probably the best way of doing things.
And I will ask you why.
Okay.
Why?
I'm Howard Schultz. I'm the CEO of Starbucks.
Okay.
My business is worth umpteen $1 billion. Mm-hmm. If I make a decision, if we just, I rose to the top by working my dick off, being good at what I do, being incredibly smart. No, there's a bit, everybody's advancement over the corporate ladder has a bit of luck, a bit of perfect timing, a bit of circumstance. But if I'm Howard Schultz, I was actually he founded the damn thing. But anyway, I took a risk, and I've been incredibly good at what I do for a long period of time to get where I am. I would argue that is incredibly, justifiable hierarchy. The guy earned it. The guy took the risk. It paid off. He's, enriched others along the way. And those even that, they haven't gotten physically rich, they've been able to profit off of their labor to do something that's not terribly difficult in making coffee.
To what extent?
Hang on, I'm not done. At the same time, if Howard Schultz all of a sudden decides to, here's a perfect example. There was that issue, I believe it was in Seattle, where they had the two men come into one of their stores, didn't buy anything, or were just hanging out, and they were asked to leave, and they didn't. Police were called, yada yada. Or they wouldn't let him use the bathroom because they weren't paying customers. Because his decision to then just allow everybody to use their bathroom has had a large effect on their bottom line. Their business in non-major metropolitan markets is tanking because because of his decision to do that, customers are turned off by that and are staying away. So extrapolate that out. Howard Schultz has made a decision that it directly affects the lives of, I don't know how many people work for him, but a lot. That may end up, tomorrow, Howard Schultz pulls the wrong lever, and all of them are out of a job, and their lives are irreparably altered. I'm not going to say they're ruined. They're irreparably altered.
Which supports anarcho-communism even more, but go ahead.
No, it really doesn't.
Yeah,
Don't you want the most competent people at the top of those hierarchical structures, the ones who have earned it, the ones who are best, not just leave it up to the fate of a popularity contest and a democratic vote?
Well, first of all, it doesn't necessarily have to come down to a democratic vote. I mean, it could come out of a lottery. It could come out of rotation.
Then,
but the thing is, okay, if you're going, I for one believe in, like I said, the anarcho-communism definition of anarchy here. So when it comes to money, when it comes to profits, when it comes to any of that, I don't care what you have to say. I think money and profits are one of the systematic problems that we face in this world today. It is one of the many problems that we have in this world today.
Okay, we'll take the money out of it.
Okay.
If in
and like you were saying, no, hold on. Like you said, I mean, yeah, he's given people jobs, but
no.
But hold on, Dorf. Hold on. No, hold on.
Jobs in this
he's providing them an opportunity to work. But what does that actually mean in that sense? I mean, he is sitting there exploiting these people for profit.
It's not exploitation.
Yes,
man.
It is.
No,
yes, it is.
Not.
Because how much money?
It's a fucking voluntary relationship.
Okay. And what happens? What happens then, Dorf? What happens if they decide they don't want to work there anymore? Is it that easy to go out and get and get another job someplace else? No, it's not.
Absolutely.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Depending on the economy, it may be almost
There's a surplus in jobs right now in the United
States.
States.
Right now there is, but you know what? Now there's talks of there being a recession. So how easy is it going to be for people who, I don't like working at Starbucks for reason A, reason B, reason C? How easy is it going to be for them to go out and get another job? Probably not that easy. Man. Probably not that easy.
Yeah, no shit. It may not be easy in an economic downturn.
Okay, but in that sense, you
can't just wish.
Hold on, Dorf. Hold on.
Hey guys, can I step in?
Hold on. Okay. 1 second, Josh. In that sense, how much are other companies going to be able to exploit their workforce, knowing that they're not going to be able to go out and get another job?
If I may.
Probably a lot.
If I may. You guys are passionate about these ideals, and that's great. That's fine. But truth be told, in a society that has embraced anarchism, whether it be anarcho-communism, anarcho-capitalism, anarcho-anarchism, it doesn't matter. Because Starbucks doesn't exist in this way anymore. It doesn't exist in this exact same way. It doesn't mean that Starbucks coffee can't exist, but Starbucks does not exist in this way under any form of anarchy. There isn't going to be this huge corporation that has this, because they don't have a tax code and a government to back up that sort of operation anymore. So, can a person start a Starbucks? Yes. Can Howard Schultz start selling his coffee? Can his coffee become so tasty to coffee lovers that his store becomes very successful? Can his store be so successful that he opens up another store down the street? Can his store down the street be so successful that he opens them all over the country? Sure. It's possible, but it isn't possible in this way. Since no one owns anyone's labor, and no one is forced to work in the way that people are forced to work now, doesn't mean you don't have to work for things. Doesn't mean you get everything for free. Not saying that at all. But because of that, anybody can open a coffee shop now. It still takes work. But I feel that the point you guys are trying to make is somewhat moot, considering the topic. I don't think it's a moot point or an unworthy topic to debate under our current system, but in this mythical conversation we're having about anarchy and anarchism, I don't think your discussion is warranted. You guys follow me at all? I follow you. So I feel like it's derailed from the subject matter to some degree, because it really isn't. We're not in this mythical conversation here, we're not in our system anymore, so we're not doing that.
Well, that's the thing, Josh, is people tend to believe, people who don't believe that anarchy can actually be a viable system of living, they don't think that coffee shops are going to be able to exist. They don't think that, mechanics are going to be able to exist. They don't think that, anything that we have now that we do for leisurely activity,
that we cherish,
is going to exist. They just think that it's going to be chaos all the time, when it's just that it's not the case. And
I guess one of the questions I would ask is, why do we need a state to have coffee shops? Why do we need a state to have anything? And I would like to bring up a point that, I'll be honest, I didn't steal this from anybody. I didn't hear this anywhere. I didn't hear it on a YouTube video. I've never heard a politician or an author say this. But it's an idea that I have. And the idea I have is that me as an anarchist or a potential anarchist, I, for one, am not opposed, because I'm also a student of history. That is what I study, and that is what I like and what I enjoy. I, for one, am not opposed to giving props, for lack of a better word, or to pay homage to past governments and organizations that have helped make our culture and our infrastructure possible. But I think that we can now progress past that. People say, who's going to build the roads? If you don't have taxes, you don't have government, you're in anarchy. Who's going to build the roads? Hey, have you looked around, man? The roads are built. The roads are already there.
Who would maintain them?
We would.
Yeah.
and that's what I mean. And I don't hear a lot of other anarchists saying that, is that I'm not opposed to giving props, saying like, hey, I'm really glad we have history to learn from and that we have this place. Where are you going to, who's going to build the buildings? Who's going to build the roads? How are we going to get water? We already have all that stuff.
That's the thing too,
it's
Josh.
already there.
Let me jump in here for a second, Josh, because right now, we have tangible things at our disposal that we can use in that system of living. Like you said, there's already buildings built, good buildings built. Mm-hmm. There's already good roads built, except here in Michigan.
Right.
They ain't much better down here in Indiana, guys.
Yeah. There's methods of automation for jobs that people may not necessarily want to do. I mean, you look I know where I live here in Plymouth, you really don't have trash men anymore. You have a guy that drives a truck that goes and picks up the trash bin and puts it into the back of the truck.
Yeah, they've privatized it.
Yes.
For the most part.
There's different methods in place now, and it's only going to get easier as time goes on and technology furthers itself. For that type of stuff to, like I said, to make things easier on people. And
a question that I ask people frequently that I never get in, every answer I get for this question is either dead wrong on a key point or it is appalling to me on a moral level. And that is, why does more technology, more intelligence, why do these, more intelligence with individuals, I mean, and more technology, why does that have to equal less liberty? And no one has ever given me an answer to that question.
Because people have watched too much Star Trek.
Well, I guess so. And because people insist on wanting rulers. Because they insist that, no, there's more people, so we have to be more careful. We can't just let anyone do whatever they want. Why not?
Hey, Josh, from an ethical perspective, I don't think you're wrong here. However, let's look at the things in practice here. the average person is more than willing to delegate the minute, the minuscule, the mundane decisions in everyday life to the man, for lack of a better term. Just look at the just growing use of just like convenience services in the gig economy. I don't want to go get my own groceries. You know, we've already graduated from the fact that you're going to grow your own food, but I don't want to go get it. I'm just going to go conveniently have somebody else do that for me. The prevalence of, you know, virtual assistants like Siri and, I don't know, Alexa, and I forget what Google's product is. It Google Voice or something like that? I forget what Google's product's called. But the fact that people are more than willing to be spied on to participate and use those products for free shows you that people are more than willing to accept losses of liberty for convenience. And it's not even for like the safety, you know, you can quote the Benjamin Franklin forever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, he's not wrong, but at the same time, that is not a, you know, and when you get down to, you know, humans as animalistic creatures, that's not a universal belief, you know, regardless of how righteous it is. Guys, people are not willing to get away from that now that they have all those modern day luxuries and conveniences that a more collective society brings to them. And I would
you're still under the assumption that you're not going to have these things if anarchy were to
we still have Siri.
We still have Siri. We still have iPhones. Yeah.
God. I'm not arguing that you'll lose them because, you know, we've gotten there this far. However, I would totally argue when you look at the psychology of large groups, you look at the psychology of the average person, things would not continue to progress if you just pulled the anarchy lever, guys.
No, okay.
No one's asking to pull the anarchy lever.
Dorf, you keep on bringing up the psychology of all of this, and you've brought it up. You've brought it up before.
I don't disagree with you. You've
brought it up before. No, you've brought it up before many times. Yet you can't back it up. You always say, "Oh, the psychology of this, the psychology of that." You can't back it up. And the reason why you can't back it up is because scientifically speaking, anarchy is more in tune with human nature than what we currently have now.
I mean, you're to analyze the psychology of it isn't any different than to analyze the psychology of the Stockholm syndrome. I mean, that's in essence what people living under government have. I mean, when slaves are freed, many slaves are afraid afterwards. They want their master back in many cases because they simply don't know what to do because they were raised in that society. But we're asking people to look further, and no one here is asking to pull an anarchy lever. But what I say when I bring up the technology points is technology should have us moving in the right direction, not the wrong direction. Now, if my argument is ethically sound, then it is ethically sound. And I understand the pragmatic idea that we can't just turn into an anarchist society tomorrow. I don't want to. It really would be chaos if we did that. If you just completely switch everything on everybody, then yeah, you will have chaos, of course. And that's the only part of it that links anarchy to chaos. But if you're moving in the right direction, and if my arguments are ethically sound, then we should be moving towards that. This should be the end goal. And right now, it's not only not the end goal, we're moving away from it. Technology is increasing, life is getting easier, yet liberty is going away. Those shouldn't be connected to one another.
Josh, I'm not going to argue the fact that liberty hasn't gone by the wayside in the name of efficiency. And I'm not going to just dispute with you that that's wrong on an ethical and moral level. It's just the idea that, in this, I would argue it's a false binary that, just because we've identified, and I think we can all agree that analysis is correct. I just don't agree with the solution here. I think it's tweaking the existing system because it is demonstrated as being the best. I would argue. I think I'm going to continue to argue the best thing that humanity as a collective has ever done. But going I don't want to call it a complete 180, but I don't have a better term than pulling the anarchy lever. I don't think that would be a great thing for human beings either, because I think it would cause a degradation of society, human beings and human society as a whole, where it becomes just I have a bigger power of stack of might compared to my other guy, which will open up even a whole worse set of exploitative relationships where might will then ultimately really in all circumstances make right. And that's not something I'm willing to chance, risk, or I think is worth it.
Tell me why that's different than government.
Josh, on an ethical level, I don't think you're wrong where you're going here. However, let's just play the cards we've been dealt mindset here. Government, you at least have the ability in modern Western society to play an influence on it with your vote. I know we've done that. Is voting worth it or anything? But you at least have the ability to influence it and have a elected leader at the top of that hierarchy versus a might makes right scenario where it's very, very, very unlikely the one with the biggest stack of guns or force or coalesced power will be kind to others and will have risen there on any other ways other than brutality and tyranny.
See, we've gone past that though. I
don't know that I disagree that we have. The reason we maintain being in that state is because of the collectivization of people in a state.
Theoretically speaking, you or Josh or myself can go out and run for office. Are we going to be able to get anywhere though in that campaign? Probably not. And it's not just because of the ideas that we have. It's because we don't have any capital. We don't have any money. We've gotten to a point in our society right now where only really the very rich can go and run for office.
That is a flaw in the current system. I will not deny that.
And when it comes to something like that, I know I'm going to sound like Bernie Sanders here, but when it comes to that 1% that typically have a stranglehold on this country, who are they going to be looking out for? They're not going to be looking out for Dorf. They're not going to be looking out for Josh or myself. They're going to be looking out for the other 1%. Take, for instance, and Dorf, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. The shootings that happened. Mm-hmm. There was a bunch of different debates that came out of that. There was a gun debate that came out of that. There was a white supremacy debate that came out of that. There was a mental health debate that came out of that. Now, I know Josh's
video games,
which I wrote something on this.
Let's put it this way. Nothing new was discussed.
Yeah. I thought I left the video game thing out of it because that's just fucking stupid. But when you look at those three issues that come up, nobody's going to do anything about the gun thing. Now, take the Constitution out of it. Nobody's going to do anything about the gun thing because of the massive stranglehold that the NRA has on the gun lobby and the GOP. Same thing goes with Big Pharma and health insurance in this company. Is anybody really going to, are these politicians, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, are they really actually going to do anything when it comes to making mental health more affordable for people? No, they're not. And in some sense, are they going to do anything about white supremacy, especially the guy who's in office right now? No, because there's a large portion of his base that are white supremacists. I'm not saying all of them are, but there is a large base of his supporters that, yes, are racist. and he doesn't want to marginalize that vote that he has. I mean, they could have gone out, and this is, like I said, this has been a talking point from the right. It's been a mental health thing. They've been talking about mental health, mental health, mental health. Well, you know what? Mitch McConnell, at any point during this whole thing, over the past 17 days, could have called the Senate back to Washington to discuss mental health. What didn't Mitch McConnell do? He didn't call them back to Washington, D.C. to discuss mental health. If that's such an issue with the problem that we have in this country when it comes to mass shootings, if you don't want to talk about guns, fine, whatever. But you're the ones going on here about mental health, and they have done nothing about it. That's top-down government control in a nutshell. They will sit here and talk and talk and talk. However, when it comes to appeasing big pharmaceutical companies, big health insurance companies, the gun lobby, or marginalizing that vote to have you keep power, nothing is going to happen.
Well, Adam, I don't agree with everything you just said, but I think you're on the right track here. Bottom line is, Republican, Democrat. I mean, we're gonna pigeonhole this into the U.S. system, I guess, at this point, just because it's easier and it makes more sense for the conversation because we are in the U.S. But truth is, we are dominated by a false duopoly. That is what is going on right now. It's a false narrative. There is a duopoly that doesn't really even exist because they're on the same side, and their only goal is to get everyone into binary thinking. That you're either a Republican or a Democrat, you're either conservative or a liberal, and that's it. And there's more to it than that.
And Josh, it comes down to that basic, I would argue, human biology and psychology, that binary is easy. It's simple.
Well, let's move past easy.
There's only two. I don't have any problem with that. I don't think anybody in this conversation has any problem with that. Does John Q. Public acknowledge that that's even a thing? I don't think they do. And until you can, wake up, sheeple, that's not going to happen. And I think a better way to approach maybe the rest of this conversation here is like, how do you wake the sheeple up?
Well, okay.
Because quite honestly, Adam, your last little segment there where you were speaking, I don't think you're wrong about big pharma. I don't think you're wrong about the inefficiencies and waste of insurance. I just wholeheartedly disagree with your solutions to it. I know we've had plenty of discussions about that before, mm-hmm. but I think it comes down to tell me whether or not this synopsis is wrong of what we've had so far. We both all three of us have identified problems with the way things are going now. We just can't agree on possible solutions. I mean, there's some stuff, Adam, in your characterizations tonight, I just don't agree with your problem identification. However, I think that's the beginning part of this episode where we couldn't agree on what a legitimate hierarchy was. I think we're never going to be able to get anywhere in that discussion because we're not even identifying that if problem X is actually a problem, and if it is a problem, what do we do? Where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. I just wouldn't argue. This is another episode we need to do. I know Winston Churchill, I think he's been attributed with this quote, and whether or not it's actually him is another story. The democracy is the worst form of government except all the others. I think there is...
You say Hamilton, isn't it?
I thought it was Churchill, but he might have been quoting Hamilton. Who knows? I would argue democracy is the most ethical perspective, but is it the best? No. Quite honestly, I'm not going to argue for a technocracy or a... God, why the fuck am I forgetting the word? ruled by the really smart people. What's that one?
Oligarchy?
No. It's not oligarchy.
I don't know.
Fuck. There's a word for it. It'll come to me in about 15 minutes. I know that. But, where you essentially put all the smart people in charge of their own individual sectors and you roll from there. I'm not saying that that's the best either, because the incentive structures within that aren't great. A republic where you represent people to go, you pick the best people to go vote their own conscience, I think is the best way to go. I think it's the best combination of ethics, efficiency, and morality going forward, whereas a pure democracy or a pure system without hierarchical structures, legitimate hierarchical structures, I don't think is morally right, because I just, you could tell me to put my tinfoil hats a little bit loose here, guys, but I just don't see a system where you actually apply anarchy. The best case scenario is stagnation. The worst case scenario is tyranny of the big dick contest. So I from an ethical perspective, if I would trust people to be their best selves at all times, I would have no problem saying, Josh, I'm on Team Josh here. An anarcho-capitalism or anarcho-anarchism is the way to go, because everything's voluntary. No one will have to be forced to do anything they don't want to do. That's great. That's wonderful. However, when you apply humans to it, people are not logical thinkers at all times. It's actually even rare that you run into somebody who's logical a majority of the time. And when you multiply that over human level populations, the results will not be good. And I know I did not bring scientific data to bear on this, but I would implore you, please do some reading about large group psychology. I would implore you that you're right on paper, but when you apply people to it,
but Dorf, what you're basically
saying
saying is you can't trust people left unchecked. So we need a government made up of people left unchecked.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is,
it's kind of what you're saying.
No, hang on. What I would argue that a better classification, or I know this is a term used by God damn it, Sam Harris. I'm going to steelman my argument here. I think that you are ethically correct. However, the best way to do the most good is with a state made up of competent, people put in positions by competence hierarchies. I think that would be my argument. That is the best, most efficient, and maximization of efficiency and morality is a state put in place by people, with legitimate, hierarchies that are legitimately formed by competence.
Competence and intelligence, to me, are actually terrible monikers to place on our leaders. I actually think it's some of the worst. The smartest person in the room is always going to think that he should rule over the dumber people, and that's not right. I mean, I think you have to go all the way back, nothing new here, to Plato to analyze this and say that if you insist on having a government, that the perfect government is a philosopher monarch. It is a monarch, a dictator, if you will, who is moral, who is ethical, and who basically, this isn't Plato talking, this is that values individual life and individual liberty. That's the only decent form of government, if there is one. I mean, you guys talk about democracy.
Josh, don't you think that would be a willful, I don't even think, that moral monarch could possibly exist, because I know we don't get into theology a lot here. In order for that person to exist, wouldn't you argue it would need to be, I don't have a better term, a human form of Jesus Christ?
That idea came up before Jesus Christ.
I know that, but like that would be the I don't know what help me out here. What's a better more moral figure? Wouldn't it have to be somebody who's so perfect that they would have to be a Airfinger's quote God?
No, they would be somebody who's so perfect because the power wasn't placed solely by them. Instead of order being maintained at the threat of violence from the government, it would be leadership maintained out of threat of violence from its people. That's what maintains a just leadership, if you will. That in essence, not to sound like a bumper sticker from the back of a 77 Ford pickup, but the government should be afraid of its people. The people shouldn't be afraid of its government. Now, one thing I want to add too. Sorry, Adam, but
no, go ahead.
but Dorf, you mentioned John Q. Public earlier. Mm-hmm. Now, I view John Q. Public a little different than some people do. See, because I believe that John Q. Public has every right to be as ignorant as he wants to be. People in the U.S. and in other democracies or, democratic republics love to say, did you vote? No. Well, then you don't have an opinion. Did you vote? Oh, then doesn't matter what you think. No, actually, I don't think there's anything wrong with not voting. I think that person has every right to be ignorant, and they get to keep their rights even though they don't care. Under a system of anarchy or a system of extreme small government, that person has every right to not pay attention. They have every right to just simply care about baseball or video games or their own family or whatever they want.
For their Bud Light and their football on the weekends. They're more than willing to do that. However, at the same time, to not participate, therefore you just automatically accept the consequences of your decision.
Well, no, it's not. You shouldn't be forced to accept the consequences of someone else's decision. You see, the idea of voting is the idea of imposing one's will on someone else. And that's where voting can lead to tyranny.
Yeah,
as well as anything else.
And that's exactly, I think my point here, why I don't think democracy is like this overall winning, like the greatest thing ever. Because, a Democratic vote here, this is an extreme example, but Josh and I both vote that we should be able to kill Adam. Is that just? Here's a better example. Josh and I have voted that we get to take all of Adam's stuff. He votes in dissent. Well, 2-1. Sorry, majority rules, buddy.
You just summed up America over the last 85 years. I mean, in essence. I mean, no, that's...
Sorry, Adam, you're out your stuff.
That goes back to... that.
We voted.
I mean, Dorf, that's the old Ben Franklin quote right there. I mean, democracy is 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. Liberty is a well-armed sheep contesting the vote. That's what liberty is all about, is that my rights don't end in a ballot box. They don't end because... I mean, one of my favorite quotes is, democracy... because screw the other 49%. That's what democracy is in essence. I mean, that's why initially, to go back to the founding fathers, that's why they had a Bill of Rights.
Well, and that's something that seems to be lost too when it comes to in a society based on anarchy. I mean, again, there's a lost concept that they're not going to have something similar to the Constitution, or they're not going to have something similar to the Bill of Rights. Of course they will. There will be that. But that Constitution, that Bill of Rights, is all going to be determined on what that particular society wants. And I know that there's an argument against anarchy when it comes to large-scale populations. Dorf brought this up a few minutes ago. I know I've brought this up before in the past, that revolutionary Spain, CNT, had in upwards of 10 million people part of an anarchist society. Free Ukraine had a population, I believe, of 7 million people. they didn't go away because they weren't able to function as a society within themselves.
They went away because they were conquered.
They went away because they were conquered, yes.
And that's another thing I want to... I know we kind of...
But the thing is, though,
we're
yes.
up against the clock here, guys, but that's another thing I wanted to bring up before we're done here. Such a loose organization of people. You're never going to get planet Earth to adopt this uniformly.
But Dorf, you're
such a loose organization of people is going to leave you open for that level of conquering.
Dorf, again, you're under the impression though that people cannot learn from past mistakes, which they can.
And the world is smaller now.
Sure.
Yes. How many times? I mean, I'm sure the framers.
There's 6 planets. 6 countries on this planet that have first strike capability. The world is incredibly small.
I'm sure the framers of the Constitution. By the way, the framers of the Constitution, they thought that their system of government that they were implementing was a radical idea too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it took years of it took a civil war, and a bunch of other problems in order for it to finally establish itself as a stable government.
I mean, hell, look at the first thing they tried was the Articles of Confederation. It was utterly toothless and terrible.
I'm not saying that anarchism in any form will be easy. It is a radical idea, and it's going to take some trial and tribulations. It's going to take some refining in order for it to work. And yes, revolutionary Spain ended up getting conquered by fascism. Free Ukraine, ironically enough, got conquered by the Bolsheviks. But that doesn't mean that you don't stop trying to accomplish something like that. You learn from those mistakes and you go on.
And even the Articles of Confederation, I'd love to cover this on an episode of Best Podcast in History at some point. But, what you said about the Articles of Confederation, is that true? Maybe. I mean, or you could describe the Articles of Confederation as 12 short years of peace and prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's another thing the Articles of Confederation were. Does anybody remember
honestly,
any history?
Josh, you could have that argument, man. You really, really could.
No, I mean, does anyone remember any history between 1777 and 1789? No,
nope.
because just
you don't
people
get
were just
that
happy.
in school.
The Brits were gone. They were doing just fine.
No,
they just didn't have any way to attack Europe. that was their issues.
Or raise a common defense, but
yeah, nobody was messing with them either.
Yeah, well, that was at the time where it was a 2-month voyage to come sailing over. But
2 months, they had 48 of them. Nobody came. The Brits didn't come back till 1812 when our, when we stopped doing that.
Yep.
One other thing I wanted to bring up too before we call it quits.
Got one question too for
sure.
Dorf if we have time.
But I thought this was important. I know I've gotten on Dorf about bringing in evidence in terms when it comes to backing up the psychological argument against anarchism. But one thing that I have here that I encourage everyone to go out and take a look at in favor. When I'm speaking in favor of anarchism is the self-determination theory. Persons need to be effective when they're dealing with the environment. The need to feel as if they're in control of their own lives, and the need to have close relationships with others. That's something that our current society, our current hierarchical society, doesn't provide us. At least not in the sense where we are, going out every single day and are able to be as happy as we possibly can be and thrive as much as we possibly can, as much as we possibly can. Hierarchy, and again, speaking from an anarcho-communist standpoint here, capital inhibits every single one of those bullet points right there.
Mm-hmm.
and that is something that, like I said, is it's a psychological it's a psychological it's psychological proof that anarchism can work and is actually more beneficial to somebody's psyche than what we currently have right now.
I agree.
Self-determination theory. Go look it up.
One could easily say that it's the natural state of things for people to have rulers, but you could also just as easily say it's the natural state of things for a cat to poop in a box. It seems that way because every cat we know does that. Every cat we know is trained to do that from the day they're born.
Mm-hmm.
But truth is, that isn't the natural state of things. Cats pre-existed boxes. They were around long before boxes and litter. So it really isn't the natural state of things.
Oh, people are conditioned to think that rulers are a necessity of everyday life. When
it's brainwashing.
I don't believe that's the case.
I agree with you, Adam. Dorf,
would it be unfair of me to say that you guys don't agree with me on this, but I am willing to recognize the legitimacy of those who are, air fingers quote, above me if they reach that position by competency. And you don't recognize that as a legitimate form of referent power.
No, I don't have a problem with that per
Okay.
se, but that isn't the current system.
So, but at the same time, then we're disagreeing on whether or not existing hierarchies are legitimate, and I think that's something we can go 15 rounds on, and we'll end up with a split. We'll never end up with a decision there.
If any intelligent person on planet Earth could actually make the argument that the two most capable people to run the country in 2016 were Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, if anyone could actually legitimately make that argument, then I would give more credence to your point.
Josh, I think the only thing we could say is, well, one of them did win, so
I'm sorry,
but
Dorf.
that's a correlation causation issue right there.
Dorf. When your last statement, though, not the Hillary Clinton one, but the one prior to that about.
Yeah, I got you.
I just don't agree with it. I can't, and I'm not. And it's like I said, it's nothing against you, Dorf, but there is something when it comes to the equality of liberty as well.
I agree.
And I think that that's something that is very, very important when it comes to anarchism, and something that I think puts itself above and beyond when it comes to other societies and other ways of life. Just because, and I'm going to read something here, liberty is the possibility of engaging in self-directed activity through which one can develop human capacities to their fullest extent.
Love it.
And throughout everyday life,
Quoting there.
I don't know who I'm quoting. I think it's a I think I'm stealing it from somebody else's just outlook on self-direction, and
Okay.
I don't think it's not a philosophy.
Are you going to name somebody profound or something?
Yeah, it's
like
not.
that?
It's not a philosopher. I don't think it's a philosopher or anything like that.
Okay.
But that's important, though.
I agree.
It's important, and it's something that is absent in today's society. Just because, yes, there are going to be some people like Jeff Bezos who are able to.
They're exceptional.
Yeah,
Exceptional people.
It's an exceptional route that he took. He was able to take Amazon from nothing and make it into something. But
Pretty damn big something.
But there are exceptions to the rule. And Jeff Bezos and maybe the guy who started Starbucks, I don't know his backstory all that well.
Howard Schultz, he also started from nothing.
There are exceptions to the rule here. But for the very, very most part, that's not how things work in this country or in this society. People who are born into privilege and into wealth are going to have a far a far easier path to accomplish those said things. And somebody like myself, somebody like Josh, or any other working class person out there aren't going to have those same chances to go out there and start a coffee shop. Even if Josh wanted to go out and start a coffee shop tomorrow, would you be able to, Josh? No. You can't. You need vast startup capital in order to do something like that.
What most of those people have to is they forego some of the basic niceties that we all crave. A family, a lot of people like that don't get any of that stuff till much later in life, if at all. Look at Elon Musk.
Yeah, in an anarchist society, all of that is done away with. In an anarcho-communist society, at least, all of that is done away with. Anybody who wants to go out there and be a doctor and go to medical school, they can do that. Anybody that wants to go out there and be
they can't though, guys.
Yes, they can.
There's minimum competency required.
In that society, they will be able to do that. If they want to go to medical school, they can do that. Now, there's going to be certain specifications, competency specifications, in order for you to probably get accepted.
Okay, what's the enforcement of that?
But those specifications,
the educators at the school.
Hold on, those specifications aren't going to have anything to do with wealth or money or anything like that. And yeah, Josh, like you just said, those specifications are going to be dictated. I hate using that word, but they will be enforced and dictated by the people running that school.
You would absolutely could still have some sort of medical society that would let people in. Now, some things in our society that do require supposedly a whole bunch of training and state certified things, like for instance being a lawyer. No, you shouldn't have to be certified for the state to be a lawyer.
No,
you should be able to hang your shingle out on your office door and say, "Hey, I'm a lawyer. Want to hire me?" And if you suck, they're not gonna hire you. I promise.
I know the law really, really well.
Yeah.
I can go in. I can go and argue your case for you in front of a delegation. And
so I would, can I summarize this last statement? You guys are against rent seeking, because I would agree with you.
Wait, against what?
Rent seeking economic activities.
Define it.
Exactly what you've been bitching about for the last 5 minutes.
I don't really follow the question either.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying
to...
Okay.
Rent seeking, defined as an economically inefficient activity, gatekeeping, unnecessary gatekeeping.
Yes, it sounds like something I definitely would oppose.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be honest with you, Dorf, I'm not opposed to somebody who has no schooling
agree.
saying they're a doctor. Say, hey, I've done a whole bunch of research. I'm a doctor. No, I'm not certified in any way. I'm not going to go to that guy. I'm really not.
But people do, and they'll be all upset that when Dr. Bob's holistic medicine, all of a sudden they die of their monkey age cancer.
They have the right to be upset.
Because they were taken advantage of?
They weren't taken advantage of. Maybe they were taken. Yes, people will be taken advantage of in an anarchist society. People are taken advantage of in a governmental society. People will still be taken advantage of.
Ways. Yeah,
Bad things will still happen.
That doesn't... Okay.
This isn't
utopia.
utopia.
I would argue a regulatory apparatus is more efficient in dealing with that problem, which will exist in either system, than just a fuck it, the market will take care of it.
You lost me with the word efficient, because again, the most efficient thing would just be to have a dictator, right?
Economically efficient, the most efficient, yeah. Yes, a totalitarian state from an economic perspective would be the most efficient. However, it would also be the most risky. The best happy medium, maximization of what people hold dear, is to have, similar to the existing regulatory environment, cut out some of the rent seeking, but still leave in those protections and certifications necessary to legitimize people, where the results are not just necessarily financially ruining, but life altering and potentially deadly.
You got to prove it to me, Dorf. I'm sorry. You got to prove it to me.
Unfortunately, my argument is from this is better than other option, and other option, we don't have any modern data on that because no one is fucking willing to try it. So,
and
I wouldn't be able to say, here's 2 charts. Here you go. Because
and I'm sure the more people I'm sure the more people are made aware of what anarchy actually is, I would think they would probably be more in favor of it than
Adam. I'm not gonna dispute the idea of not having a ruler or unjust hierarchies.
No, and I'm not going to dispute if you went out on the street right now and said, "Hey, what do you think is better? The type of governmental society that we have right now, or an anarchist society?" I bet you 9 out of 10 people are going to say a governmental society. But the only reason why they're going to say that is because they think anarchy is chaos. That's it. If people understood what anarchy is, then I think that you would have, maybe 8 out of 10 people.
And I think that's me and Adam's desire here with this, is to educate some people on this. Listen, Dorf, I want to give some credence to some...
I don't disagree with you guys' definition of this at all. It's
but I want to give some credence to some things you're saying.
I don't think it's appealing.
Okay.
That's fine, I guess.
We haven't really argued. That's why I asked you guys to define your terms up front, and I can't disagree with your definition on it.
No, that's good.
The fact that it's like ethically, the utopian ethic.
I prefer clarity to agreement. So I'm glad that we're being clear on everything, and I'll come clean on a few things real quick. I know we're short on time, but
we need to get this right.
I do value liberty above many things. And to me, if you're going to sell me on an idea that subject X is better under a statist society than it is under an anarchist society, you're going to have to use an example that is perfect in the statist society. Because if you tell me, geez, Josh, under your and Adam's system that you guys were just spelling out, we know for a fact that medical errors will go up by 17%. We know that ownership of guns by people with a mental illness will go up 32%. We know that okay, there are prices to pay for liberty. There are prices to pay for liberty. Freedom isn't free, as the country music songs would tell you. That I acknowledge that.
I think the South Park wrote a song about that.
If you
Dorf, don't give your bucko 5, who will?
Dorf, I want to throw you a bone here, man, because you've been a great sport. We've been double teaming you a lot, and I want you to, I want you to throw the loop at me and Adam that I would throw at me and Adam right now, okay, if I was in your shoes, and we may not have time to answer the question. I acknowledge that now because we don't have much time left. But if I were you, you guys seen the bracelets, the WWJD? Mm-hmm. If Dorf was wearing his "What Would Josh Do" bracelet right now,
can you give me one of those, by the way?
Then this is the question.
That's what those.
Oh yeah, that's what those stand for. You didn't know that?
Oh, okay. Josh Hauslander.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah, what would Josh do? Yeah, you see kids wearing them all the time. So, hey, Dorf,
I actually used to have one of those.
It's a good thing to have. It's a good thing to have. The question I would ask to try to separate the double onslaught that you've been under today is, this is Dorf asking me and Adam, is this system of anarchy, any form of system, any type of system of anarchy that we've discussed, is it reconcilable between ideologies that vary as much as, for instance, Adam and I are? And to me, that, I think, is perhaps a valid question against anarchy. And I don't necessarily have the answer, but that's the question that I feel that should be asked of Adam and I. Is it reconcilable between,
to that point,
a left-wing or a right-wing ideology?
To that point, I think that's kind of the sufficiency argument I've been trying to make here. I would argue that without the coercive power of a state, you have very much, I don't want to call it right brain, left brain thinkers, but let's just call it, by the modern day dichotomy, right and left thinkers, left alone without a referee in the, let's call it the state. I see that devolving into chaotic violence very quickly, and then what will rise out of that is a tyrannical, authoritarian ruler who rose to the top of the pile by the biggest, having the biggest swinging dick. You know what I mean? That's. I don't think that there's very much we've ethically disagreed about here in a utopian world where we can get everything we want. I think anarchy would be fucking desirable. It is. I'm not going to deny that. However, we live in reality here. When you put human beings, let alone human beings in a massive population of over 7 billion people here, there's no way in fucking hell that if you turn that dial, I'm not saying turn it back a little and take back a little bit of liberty within this current modern system, but dial it back to where you want it to go, that doesn't end in chaotic violence, mass death, and that's not a sacrifice people are willing to make.
Sounds like we'd be no worse off than a system of government. And we have all that stuff right now. We've never not had that stuff.
I disagree with you on that point, but all right. Anything else, guys? We're going to wrap it up.
All right, Adam, do you think I made Dorf's argument better than he did?
I
might have.
And one last thing for me.
Man.
And one last thing for me. That is where Josh and I greatly differ on this whole thing. Is he's a right wing anarchist. I'm a left wing anarchist. I think. Sorry, Josh. I think right wing anarchy descends into chaos, and I think it dies out. I know that's a past show, and it's maybe another future show, but I think from that standpoint, that's what happens. And I think the big factor in all of that is money. I think it's capital. I think that's what people are going to end up, fighting over in that society. So
yeah, I don't know that I'm a right wing anarchist, and I actually would venture to say that our differences are reconcilable, but they have a whole bunch of minding your own business is what they have.
They're not. You're going to the gulag.
This is what I fear in your system. This is what I fear in your system.
No, there's no gulag. There's no gulag in the anarcho-communist system.
Yeah, and there is so much more that we could talk about here. I would have loved to mention police in an anarchist system, and that's something that we really definitely don't have time.
Police would run in the similar sense as a fire department does.
I believe when it comes to police, I do not like our modern form of policing, but the classical, and it can be done on a larger scale, the classical idea of a sheriff. A sheriff.
Somebody's voted in.
Yeah, is a just thing, and it's quite honestly really the only time I actually really truly support democracy is in that kind of small sense where power is given and can be immediately taken away.
I'm with you in that sense too. I get on this in a larger scale sense, in some other time, but yeah, I think that I think a combination of other factors in this. When it comes to crime, I mean, you have to identify the problem first. I mean, there's a factor of emergency response, there's a factor of forensics, and then there's a factor of rehabilitation. In today's society, I think you're absent of rehabilitation. Our current prison system, our current jailing system, it seems like it's all about revenge rather than.
Hey, do we have a next topic for our next show picked out yet?
No.
You're the boss, Dorf. What's up?
Let's do that right there.
What is it?
Prison Planet.
Prison Planet?
not
Paul Watson. Not Paul Watson.
Yeah, not Paul Watson, but the idea, modern. I don't like using the justice system. Let's call it that. The justice system. Whether we want to do the morality of cash bail, the rehabilitation versus revenge/punishment, is it just a spot where we put all the undesirables, that sort of thing. I think that should be our next show.
Okay. I'm done with that. Yeah.
Done.
Prisons, justice system, all that in a nutshell.
We'll come up with a catchier title.
Sounds great.
All right. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, Alex Jones is going to sue you if you try Prison Planet.
No, it's Paul Watson in jurisdiction, buddy. He's in the UK. Anywho.
Yeah, fuck him.
Anywho, we only missed our target quitting time by 20 minutes, but
that's pretty good for us, actually.
Yeah, that's actually not bad for us.
Tune into the Xcast coming up next.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys are going to do an Xcast. I am not going to be on that, so stay tuned here, and probably 15, 20 minutes after this one wraps, Adam and Josh will be doing Xcast. What are you guys talking about tonight?
We're talking about the new Kenobi TV show that sounds like it's going to be coming out, and we're going to discuss a little bit of politics because we're going to talk about one of my favorite political candidates, Vermin Supreme.
Vermin Supreme is my shitposting hero. So
love that guy.
I brought this point up in our group chat earlier today that he is the OG of UBI with his one pony policy. So,
well, hold on. Would that one pony policy be a monthly policy, or we only get one pony per person?
I think it's just one per person.
I don't know. I don't think he's fleshed it out.
Okay.
And mandatory toothbrushing too.
Yes, he has the.
God, I am so for that.
Yeah.
A dental hygiene policy.
He's a friendly fascist.
He's your friendly neighborhood fascist.
Fascism I can get behind. Everybody has to brush their teeth.
For those who don't know who Vermin Supreme is, I believe he's a gentleman from Vermont.
Yeah.
New York, because he's ran for governor in New York. That's what it is.
Should have won.
From New York. He is. He's not. He's a comedic. He's like a sketch comic, but he's always around, and he wears a rubber boot on his head, and is just ridiculous, and it's funny as hell. So there's plenty of YouTube videos available on him if you're in for a good laugh. But anyway, that is going to wrap up episode 15 here of Politics of the Empire, presented by theempiremedia.com. Join us next time at a still-to-be undetermined date, about 3 or 4 weeks from now, for our next show, and that will be on the prison system, justice system, whatever you want to call it. So for Adam and Josh, I am Dorf. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks.